This episode of Obscure Chatter is brought to you by Hannibal Lecter. You know what you look like to me with your good bag and your cheap shoes? You look like a rube. A well-scrubbed, hustling rube with a little taste. Good nutrition's given you some length of bone, but you're not more than one generation from poor white trash, are you, Agent Starling? And that accent you've tried so desperately to shed, pure West Virginia. What is your father, dear? Is he a coal miner? Does he stink of the lamp? You know how quickly the boys found you. All these tedious, sticky fumblings in the back seats of cars, while you could only dream of getting out, getting anywhere, getting all the way to the FBI. And now, on to the episode. I don't know, guys. Sometimes I want to just lean too much into the obscure part of Obscure Chatter. And here's where I could give myself an out and be like, hey, someone requested that you do a Valley Girl Hannibal Lecter. No one did. No one did. I have been trying to make that the sponsor for months. And I went, today. And the reason I went today is because I've been so busy that I forgot to write up a little sponsorship jokey joke and just went, oh, now's the time. And somebody did ask about my Southern accent, which I, on X, Twitterx. I like that, actually. About doing Southern accents, and I'm like, oh man, you're not listening to Obscure Chatter because I did Bill Shakespeare with a Southern accent, so I almost went Southern. Anyways, hi, welcome to Obscure Chatter. I am your host, Terri Doty. If this is your first time listening, welcome. And if it isn't, welcome back. It is July, the end of July. It's actually our 50th episode. And I typically haven't been kind of keeping up until after the episode, how far we've come. But as you might have noticed through social media, I have been uploading all of Obscure Chatter onto YouTube as another option for people. But always remember, we're able to be heard through a variety of places. If you're listening, obviously you know that. But yeah, I really am very happy with all the places that were available. But YouTube seems to be a really big selling point for people. As I mentioned through social media, I have a friend who's an amazing tattoo artist. And he was like, yeah, let's sell your show to me. Where is it? And I'm like, it's on Spotify at the time. I've added it to more places. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. He's like, nope, don't do that. Is it on YouTube? I'm like, no. He's like, I'd listen to it if it were on YouTube. I'm like, oh. So worked on that. Now all episodes are going to be up on YouTube, and we've also continued every Thursday now for adding TAS Rewind, formerly known as That Anime Show, to the normal Obscure Chatter feed, but it also has its own YouTube channel to really help distinguish between the two, even though they share the RSS feed. That Anime Show podcast on YouTube. Just search that, or search That Anime Show. And Obscure Chatter. They both have their own YouTube channels. And that's one tiny thing that I've been able to just kind of work through during my downtime. But there hasn't been a lot. We've been working on a lot of stuff lately. And it really honestly feels like I just talked to you guys. I feel like I was just reading that Sheltering Sky quote from I think in the episode last month, I had mentioned it was Brandon Lee, but it was Brandon Lee quoting The Sheltering Sky by Paul Bowles. And Steven, after the episode, was like, holy crap. I had no idea that, where this was from, but he's really into Neurosis. And he's like, have you heard Neurosis is Lost? And so we listened to that, and And then we also, I feel like maybe I'm going to start doing like corrections because like I got that wrong. And this is not the first time I'm noticing that I've gotten something wrong in an episode. Even that anime show, like listening to it back, I'm like, oh God, can we cut that? Let's cut that out because I'm so wrong in this information I'm giving. But I mean, that's live. It's real. It's in the moment. And like, I remember one time a fan messaged me. They're like, hey, you keep saying Judy Bloom, but you're actually thinking of Beverly Clearly. I'm like, fuck. Why are those interchangeable to me? And I think it made sense as to why, but now I can't remember. But I was talking about like Kramer when I should have meant Frasier. And then I had mentioned something about Parasite the Maxim's availability. And like 3 people clocked me on it, the dub being available a few places and the DVD being available a few places. So, hey. And then obviously like little corrections. Like I kind of try to recall the year a movie or a show came out, and sometimes I'm wrong. So y'all got me good, y'all. But so I'm really glad you guys have been enjoying it. And as we keep up with Obscure Chatter, now comfortably within its 5th year of broadcasting, I just want to thank everybody that's continued to listen. Listening this month has been, as far as music goes, I've been listening to Mothika, I've been listening to Nirvana. And oddly enough, I forget why this came up, but I did have a reason to kind of like think about like family stuff this last month, as I had a family member that I have been no contact with for over 20 years. They passed away. And so my brother reached out to me and he's like, hey, just letting you know that so-and-so passed. Like, okay. And it felt really cold to say, but I'm like, this person, we did not end on good terms. This family member and I did not end on like legal bullshit went through. But because this family member passed away, it had me thinking of, my dad passing away, which this year in October, it'll be 21 years since he's been gone. And as I get older, I'm starting to think, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this. I'm sure people have. The lived experience is full of so many commonalities. It would be insane for me to be the only one that's ever thought this. But my father passed away when he was 42. He fell asleep behind the wheel and had been drinking in a Jeep and fell asleep, veered off, and I'm told that he passed quickly. I hope that's the case. I'm mad at him to this day for being so irresponsible. And that's the thing with a lot of people. Total tangent, I'm sure, already at the top of the show. But most accidents like that happen within a 5-mile radius of where you live. And so, and I think the reason for that is you let your guard down, especially if your inhibitions are, altered. And your state of mind is altered, you kind of forget that you are incredibly fallible and incredibly mortal. So, fell asleep, and I miss him a lot. Talking about this family member that passed, I got none of that feeling, none of that fuck, I wish that, we'd found a way to make up or anything like that. It was just I think I told my brother, I was like, I kind of thought he'd already died. And he's like, yeah, a little bit, me too. But it gave my brother and I the chance to talk. We were kind of low contact, but that's one thing I guess I forget about having a sibling is this kind of person that's been with you in the trenches. We don't always get along, and we haven't always gotten along. We have a very interesting checkered history together, but there was sometimes when shit like that happens and it doesn't directly have anything to do with you, you're able to just look at your sibling and just be like, you get it, nobody gets it like you get it. But yeah, so that got me thinking about my dad, and I was trying to think of music to kind of listen to just kind of vibe. And I remember our last summer together, I got him into Chevelle, specifically Send the Pain Below. So anytime I hear that song, I think of my dad. But anytime I hear Typo Negative, I also think of my dad. There was this point where he and I were reconnecting, and I was talking about Typo Negative on the phone with him. And my parents were divorced, like for a long time by this point. But yeah, I said Typo Negative, and my mom happened to be walking by, and she's like, "That's not your blood type." And my dad like overheard that. He's like, "Oh my God, she's such a square. We're talking about music. Tell her we're talking about music." And it was just this like, yeah, God, Mom, be cool for like 2 seconds. But so yeah, kind of been revisiting Typo Negative, and just kind of remembered that story, and also realized, oddly enough, or not oddly enough, some of you may remember, if you've been following me for a while on social media and just through that anime show and all that stuff, when my mother and I were still speaking, but my mom had a house fire. Like, there was a crack in the fireplace. So as everybody was going to bed, my brother stayed up and just like fell asleep to watching the fire in the living room. And what they didn't know, and luckily my brother was able to like wake up in time. Otherwise, nobody probably would have made it. And that would have been my mom, my brother, his kids, and his wife. Crazy shit. But the fire traveled through the cracks in the fireplace and just went through the walls. They lost the roof. A lot of amazing people that might be listening to the show donated to help my family out. And what I didn't think about is I left a lot of my dad's stuff when I was closing up his estate, because that was my responsibility at 19. Not a big thing. Was all the stuff that got destroyed that I just kind of left there thinking, when I get a bigger place or a place of my own, and then you just kind of forget about some of this stuff, is destroyed. And so I thought about the stuff that I was planning to take back. Like, my dad had all of Star Trek Next Gen on VHS, like those gray, big, boxy VHS complete collection. And he had these commemorative plates. He really loves Star Trek, and I love Star Trek because that's just part of my childhood. As much as I like the nostalgia that Star Wars brings, it doesn't hit like Star Trek does. It really doesn't. But all of that was destroyed, and some bits of furniture that I was always hoping to take. And what I didn't, it feels so myopic. I didn't fathom really all the stuff my brother no longer had access to. Like, he got, my dad was in the Navy, and he got 2 flags. I forget. One was from the Navy, and the other, I forget where it's from. But I gave one to my stepsister, and one to LD. I didn't have room for them, and 2, they just didn't feel like they were mine. But I didn't even get that, like, that got burned up, and not only burned up, but when the fire department comes and like puts out a fire, it's a bunch of chemicals, it's a bunch of water. There's a lot of water damage and shit too. Like, it's hard to save some stuff, even if it doesn't necessarily get burned. But talking to my brother, I was like, yeah, well, enjoy the funeral, blah, blah, blah. And there's a family plot for the Dotys. And my brother had noted, oddly enough, that he went to go visit our dad's grave, and the pictures were missing. Like, he'd gone a while ago, because he lives closer to where my father's buried. And he noticed that one photo was missing. Like, it's one of those gravestones where like you could put pictures up. I had nothing to do with planning that. That also has a whole other story attached to it. But this time, when he went for the funeral of this latest passing, he noticed both photos were missing. And he asked people, some of the nicer people he encountered, because other people were not as nice to him, which, again, long story that is not worth telling, at least not right now. But they were like, we don't No, we don't know anything about that. And pretty pissed too. And, it could have been time. It could have been, that the photos or whatever that were in there got damaged and, so-and-so decided to take them. But like nobody, like apparently that's a thing. Like people just take shit from graves like that. And it was so wild. So my brother was kind of like, it just sucks because like, I don't even have photos to replace those with. And it's something that hadn't occurred to me is I have a lot of photos of Dad that I just never thought to split up between the two of us. And that made me feel a lot of ways about it. So I kind of mentioned to him, I'm like, let me go through photos. And I had scanned a bunch too. Like, let me go through photos and I'd love to give you what I can. And I just mailed off a bunch of photos and like my dad's old Zippo. My dad was a big smoker. Probably why my brother and I smoked too for a long time. But I've been smoke free for almost 12 years. Actually, I want to say it's 12 years like this month. Woo, go me. My brother probably still smokes, but my dad had like his name like engraved on the lighter, which also happens to be my brother's name. So it's like, hey, let me get that to you. And it felt really good, even though we're low contact and we have like issues that probably a lot of siblings have and probably not many siblings that want to talk to each other have. But take that as you will. But if I mailed it off yesterday and I was like nervous going to the post office. I can't really like say why. I think it's because I'm just kind of letting a bunch of like those hangups go instead of just kind of being territorial about my dad's stuff. It's not just my dad. It's his dad too. So he deserves to have memories to kind of clutch, like tangible memories. Those are few and far between, especially in the digital age. But like he's got like my dad passed away in 2003. Yeah. So October 2003. So I was still at that point a really big like disposable camera person where I would just fill up photos and then go to Walmart, get those developed in a couple of hours and just frame, distribute, blah, blah, blah. And I even had photos that I don't think my brother's seen of like my last summer with our dad. And, but I packaged it all up. And when I walked into the post office, there was nobody in there. And it was like 10 yesterday. Kind of went like, oh, there's something about an empty government building where you're like, I don't know. But I just heard like, I'll be right with you. And it was this guy, Travis, long beard, white beard, like a hippie Gandalf almost. But he's like, yeah, let me know when you're ready. Da 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 da. And I was like shaking as I was writing out my brother's address and like putting the photos in this envelope and like getting my dad's lighter out of my pocket and throwing that in and closing it up. I don't know. I really can't pick up. It felt really good, but I was like nervous. Like Travis, this postal worker named Travis is just going to be like, what do you think you're doing? I don't know. But, I, went up and he's like, you having a good day? I'm like, I am. I'm having a great day. And just kind of like checking out my stuff, like scanning stuff. And, he's like, got any plans this weekend? I'm like, yeah, actually, I'm gonna get up early and on Sunday and see a movie with my husband. And he's like, Deadpool, Wolverine. I'm like, yeah, how'd you guess? And he pointed to my shirt and I was wearing an X-Men shirt. He's like, I could pretend to be like psychic and be like, I'm guessing you're gonna see Deadpool, Wolverine, but you're wearing an X-Men shirt. So I safely guessed that. And we just talked about that and ended up talking about just like this drama that Steven had with his fasting lab and blah, blah, blah. And I just talked and I don't know, he kind of had like a father vibe to him. It just felt really good. And he had me like laughing, like cackling, just the two of us. And I thought like he was just a friendly guy, but someone came in as I was leaving and he was not nice to him. So I'm like, I don't know. I just needed this really cool energy. He was so nice. But text my brother. I'm like, hey, you just sent it off. He's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I remember that lighter. Oh, and so, hey, all of that spawned from me just talking about typo negative. I never fully plan what I'm talking about, but I'm really glad that I talked about that because, there's drama with family and all of that. And I could really focus on, like, oh, you guys don't know and blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. That was a really nice way to end the week and kind of start closing out this month is just letting some shit that no longer serves me go. Talk to Steven a lot about it after he finished up for the day, which is one of my favorite things to do is just kind of like we see each other a lot because he works remotely. I work remotely sometimes, but like when I'm recording for like Crunchyroll or Okratron or a few other things that I've been recording this month, I typically go there as much as I enjoy the health safety of recording remotely. With Steven working from home, it's just sometimes impossible to record remotely. And also just sometimes if a studio doesn't pay me additional to use my equipment and my, electricity and stuff, it's not worth it. I'll just put on a mask and get out of the house for a second. But it was nice to just kind of talk about that. Not really feeling sad, but just feeling like I'm glad that I kind of let some shit that have been bothering me go. And I'm hopeful that my brother and I can try to make like chatting on the phone more of a thing. Which also is so odd to me. Maybe his phone plan or whatever, but he is a terrible texter. I don't understand how someone's a terrible texter in this day and age. He is a phone guy. I don't know. Like, who are you? Talking about movies, thinking about my dad, like talking about Star Trek and all that. I guess maybe there was just something in the energy because I revisited a lot of my old go-tos. I revisited all of the Alien quadrilogy, which is Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection, which is not everybody's cup of tea, I understand. Or Alien 3 too is a bit divisive. But then I was like, fuck it, let's go to Prometheus, which I can't believe it, but Prometheus has been out for like 12 years now, which I remember seeing that in theaters, and it doesn't feel that long ago, but time is funny that way. And right after that, like, I just randomly had like Alien Resurrection on, and we were watching Hulu. So Steven's like, fuck it, they got Prometheus, which I have on Blu-ray. But then we finished Prometheus, and it was still a pretty decent Saturday night. We're just chilling, vibing with our dog on the couch. And so, like, oh shit, they have Alien Covenant, which I do not remember liking. I really liked it this second time. I think you have to watch it pretty closely after Prometheus in order to get it, because I think that was my problem the first time. Is I'm like, I don't remember like David that much, which is shocking because it was Michael Fassbender, and I remember pretty much everything with Michael Fassbender. But that's a whole other story, y'all. That's an after hours conversation where we're just like really talking about inappropriate love interests and all that. But anyways, talking about all the Aliens movies, and I am really psyched for Alien Romulus. I'll even like vibe on like the Alien, the Alien versus Predator movie. I can't watch the one that came after that. And there are a bunch of great Predator movies, obviously. And there are some not so great ones too. But yeah, I watch all of them all the time. But Alien Covenant, gave it another shot, and I enjoyed it this time. I actually just randomly had it on while I was doing laundry earlier in the week. Like, again, it was awesome. Another one that I revisit, it has nothing to do with aliens, is Vamp. But you've never seen Vamp and you are remotely interested in 80s vampire movies at all, or just a big fan of Grace Jones, who has no dialogue in the movie but still manages to fucking dominate every scene she's in. It's amazing. It's cheesy as fuck, but you will not care. Well, you might care, but if I like it and you're listening to the show, there's a high probability that you might enjoy it. But and then shows, I don't think I've remotely been quiet about Interview with a Vampire, but that I finally wrapped that up, and Jacob Anderson and Sam Reed are everything. Eric Bogosian, Assad, I forget what his last name is, plays Armand. Delaney Hales, who plays Claudia in this season. I could go on forever, but guys, I think the first season's about to go on Netflix. If you're more of a Netflix person than AMC Plus, please give it a shot. Season 3 has been greenlit. It's going to be great. Whether or not you're a fan of the books, the Vampire Chronicles books by Anne Rice, I think you might dig it. And if you don't, shut up about it. Also, I mean, this is the month for season finales. There was The Bear season 3, which I was hit or miss per episode, but one of the best episodes of television that I've ever seen. And I think if you're into The Bear, you might be like, what? But it hit me in just an amazing way. And the actress that was the focus of this episode, she is nominated for an Emmy. The episode called Napkins will hands down be one of my favorite episodes of television ever. For The Bear season 2, episode called Forks, that was a strong contender, but Napkins is my favorite. It's some of the best acting. I wish I could remember this actress's name, but John Berthenol, he's the Punisher. He was Shane in Walking Dead. He's been in a bunch of stuff. He plays Michael in The Bear. Their back and forth in this flashback episode, stellar. Absolutely stellar. I revisit Zombie which is probably one of the first anime that, like, I just found on my own because the name looked familiar. I collect the manga when I can find it. But Crunchyroll, saw that it was on, revisit that. Like, sometimes I'm like, yeah, like, manga anime really hasn't changed that much, since I've gotten into it. And then I'll watch, like an anime from 2007. I'm like, oh, I'm wrong. I'm very wrong. It reeks of 2007, which is not a bad thing, but I don't know anyone else that's into that. But yeah, been trying to watch, or trying to wrap up everything. Like, I wrapped up Star Trek Discovery, which I'd say this is probably their weakest season. Unfortunately, there's some really good episodes, but I got bored more often than I'd like to admit. But, give it some time, give it a breather, and I will probably revisit it. I love Michael Burnham. Is it Burnham? Spock's sister. But yeah, it's great. Check it out. The big season finale, like, Interview with the Vampire was great, but it wrapped up really nice. The big, like, holy shit, like, season finale was The Boys season 4. I really don't know anybody that's into it that, like, I personally hang out with, but I'd love to talk about it more. It is not everybody's cup of tea. I'm a big fan of Eric Kripke. Obviously, I'm a big Supernatural fan, and so it's got Supernatural actors that I recognize, but Eric and his team are really good at doing cliffhangers, and this was a really good one. An upsetting one, but a good one. And put to, Nirvana's Heart-Shaped Box. It's not easy to do. And that was, like, kind of a tweet that I made either a couple of days ago, where it's like, as a kid, you're watching a movie, and you're like, ooh, if a song comes on, you're like, ooh, I like this song. But as an adult, I'm like, oh, they paid to get this fucking song. And that was the song where you hear Nirvana in anything, you're like, oh, they fucking paid to get that Nirvana song in there. Like, they paid. But oddly enough, like a little like, is I'm still watching the newer Twilight Zone, and I've been really enjoying season 2 more than season 1, but there was an episode yesterday that Steven and I tried to watch, and we only got like 10 minutes in. You know, they do a lot of alien stories, and it was one with Jenna Elfman and somebody, but we had to stop. It was just too triggering for us. I think it was about like an alien trying to take the shape of this couple's daughter who had passed away, and I wouldn't say like it necessarily hit too close to home, but it was too like, I can't enjoy this because I obviously was triggered by it, but also on top of it, it was I just kept focusing on these especially Jenna Elfman just losing her shit at even the idea of her daughter possibly being back. I'm like, oh no, like I was kind of like trying to play it cool, and then checking at Steven. I'm like, hey, and he's like, please turn it off. And so we just watched like X-Men stuff and Deadpool stuff to kind of like remind us of like everything that's happened to get us to Sunday when we go see Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool and Wolverine. But yeah, that was just we weren't okay for a second there. And I mean, that's how powerful art is sometimes. It's not necessarily always a good power you want to feel. But yeah, as far as books, I've been kind of in a weird reading slump. I don't know about y'all. There's something about like maybe a summer slump. I don't know, but I did finish a trilogy by Intisar Khanani. It's the Dauntless Path trilogy, and there are little side stories that you can read, but you can also skip and be totally fine, honestly. Like book 1 is Thorn, book 2 is The Theft of Sunlight, and book 3 is A Darkness at the Door. That was something that I wrote I had wrote about because I was just trying to work out, and you know, a character death happened, and it was done so well. I'd never read anything by Intisar before, but I will. I'm looking forward to checking out, I think a newer series. I have it bookmarked from the library. I think I have one on hold right now, but it just hit, the character death was done so well that I was like bawling, like my entire day was paused because I could not get my shit together at all. Just completely at all. But yeah, check it out by Intisar Khanani. I always provide links for everything that I mention, whether that's their IMDb or their Amazon, or sometimes like if it's a band or something, like their band website or something like that. But yeah, so check that out. Check that out if you haven't already. It's not for everybody, but that's literally everything. Like I love whenever I mention something. It's that social media thing where all you have to be is, I've said this before, where it's like, yeah, I really love potato chips. And like, oh, so you hate fries? And like, motherfucker, no. But like, oh, I really love this book. And they're like, I hated it. I'm like, okay. I don't understand why you needed to tell me that. Like sometimes I do that. And then I'm like, nobody needed to know. Like if somebody's like, holy shit, this series, you know, this series was fucking everything. And, you know, unless it's just like a friend texting me, I don't need to get on like their post and be like, really? I hated it. Unless they asked. I'm a work in progress. I'm sure I've done that recently. And there's a friend being like, well, hypocrite much? Probably. Sorry, guys. Oh my gosh. Well, that gets us caught up on all the fun media stuff. Speaking of being busy, as I had mentioned being busy, the big thing this month was returning for Fairy Tale. For the Fairy Tale 100-Year Quest. 100-Year Quest or 100 Years Quest? I don't know. Like, when nobody tells you if you're returning for a show, like, hey, heads up, hope you're available. I haven't gotten that, I think, ever. It's just, Terry, we're just assuming you're available, which is probably almost always true, but hey, can you like pretend like you're worried Terri isn't available just for 2 seconds? Terri, talking about myself in third person. But it is great to be back. There is something about returning to something. I had to actually ask Chris George, who is directing this. A lot of people remember Tyler Walker being the director of the original show. He wasn't the only director, but for a while there, especially at the beginning, he was the sole director. And I believe he's writing the scripts now. But, you know, when I was kind of like, I was asked to come in for the first episode. Nobody told me who the director was. I was like, well, I don't think Tyler's directing anymore. So who is it? And I I didn't want to be surprised. I don't know why, but I like text Tia and just Tia Ballard, who plays Happy, and just being like, well, first of all, because she's bicoastal, I'm like, am I going to see you in the area at any point during recording this? And she's like, yes, off and on. I'm splitting my time and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, thank God. And I'm like, do you know who the director is? She's like, it's Chris. I'm like, oh, okay. Awesome. And I haven't really talked to anybody else in the cast. Like Tia's probably, I'm trying to think of like other actors in the show. Like I ran into Brina, who was recording right before me for it. And it's been so long that I'm like, oh, are you in Fear? Oh, of course, you're Julia. Like, da-da-da. Like, it's a huge cast. And, I don't know, coming in, I had to ask Chris, I'm like, how long has it been since we did this? He's like, either 2018 or 2019, like right before the world imploded. And one thing I will say that was crazy is Chris didn't give me a reference. So I play Virgo in the show, and I also play the younger versions of Mystigan and Jalal. And so we're reviewing what we're about to do for Virgo, and out of nowhere, you know, I'll always kind of, if I'm not sure about like immediately recalling a voice, I do always have like a little safety line. Like a line that I distinctly remember from a show. So, or like a little callback, like when I was auditioning and really tearing myself apart for trying to like audition for Alois Trancy. I always did this like, of course, you idiot, like kind of thing. And then, as I'm auditioning, Ian's like kind of giving me some feedback, and I'm like, of course, you idiot. And he's like, oh, I'm like, I'm so sorry. You don't know that it's me making sure that I'm getting into the voice. Or, and when Lucy was cast, I'm like, is it because I called you an idiot, or is Lucy that good? He's like, both, damn it. That's not true, but Lucy is really that good. When you lose, I hate saying that, when you lose a part, it wasn't mine. Dear God, I wish more people understood that. But when it comes down to like, possibly you and a couple of other people, and one of those people are Lucy Christian, you're like, should I just go? I mean, she's that fucking good. God. She really is. I hope she never hears how much I love this woman. This woman is amazing, but she doesn't need to know how powerful I think she is. But yeah, all that to be said is when we recorded it, I immediately was like, oh, okay, I remember. This is how Virgo stands. Some actors don't like to admit this, and I did like post about it. Every character has a stance. When I play a guy, I tend to have a wider stance. Sometimes I rub my belly like, hey, what's going on, mama? Like, I think I did that for Jalal, like where it's just kind of like, hey, Colleen, what's going on? She's like, ew, what are you doing? But Virgo does this little like shimmy, hands at her sides. I kind of do this little hi. And then said, I'm a very loyal spirit who'll do anything to please her wizard. And Chris is like, sure. Yeah. And, did it, did her lines. And we did one more pass, and he's like, you're good. I'm like, oh, it was crazy to just kind of be like, oh, like we're back. And The way I say princess is not the way I say princess for Virgo. Like, it's always princess. Crazy to revisit. So when they announced it, they only announced 3 people. And then the link they had didn't work. So all of us are like, can we talk about it? Because you only named 3 people, and we'd like to know if we can talk about it too. But you just don't know, so you play it safe because NDAs are a thing. Even though it's like, well, anyone watching it might already know Virgo's in it, might already know Juvia's in it, all this stuff. And finally they got the link working, so that's when the post that I'd saved for the announcements, like, hey, and got flooded with like all these amazing messages, like, because I said, like, did you miss me? And everyone's like, yes, except for one jackass. It's like, no. Oh, my God, so clever. But I have a friend who helps me out from time to time. And she messaged me. I forget when she messaged me. It might have been the next day. She's like, so I Googled you to kind of see like what people were saying. And I found that there's an announcement on like a fandom post. And it says that this is your first role in 5 years, which super isn't. And also labeled me as semi-retired. And so I checked it out. I'm like, I don't know. Like, am I really supposed to be like, hey, someone's wrong on the internet, I can't go to bed? But they took it upon themselves, and then they had a couple of other people take it upon themselves, and they got into a couple of like flame wars with some people trying to correct it and being like, well, she is semi-retired. And like, says fucking who? Not me. Just because you, I don't know. It was a weird thing to kind of like talk about, but I mentioned it on social media because I'd noticed this not just with myself, but with other people. Like Micah Solusad had posted like, hey, I don't know who needs to hear this, but I'm not dead. I'm not dead. I'm just working on other things. And I kind of feel like that was a thing for me. Like not this week, but the week before, I did prelay for a pilot of a cartoon that is so freaking cool and so freaking cute. And it was something different for me, but not. It's just something I don't really get to do all that often anymore, or just recently. And then I'm working on this little comic thing on my own. And then I'm just auditioning up a storm. Auditioning is most of the job. But to be like listed as semi-retired I'm like, well, who decided that? Not me. So that was weird. And then on top of that, I noticed that two actors, at least 2 actors, didn't return to their roles in Fairy Tale. One for the role of Panther Lily and another for the role of Levy, who is one of the, obviously in English, was originally voiced by my friend Christy Bingham, who's now known as Christy Kang. Both are cool names, damn it. But, and her husband is so sweet. But I've known Christy since like my late teens. And so what pissed me off, and I'm revealing for the first time, is seeing people get wrong why Christy isn't returning to her role. And I just want to know, like, where the fuck people get off just kind of like making their own assumptions and then making that a fact in someone's page. I haven't gotten to see Christy, honestly, I think since I had her recording for an episode of Junji Ito. So this is like 2018. I occasionally check in with her via text. Christy's got a lot going on. And, you know, it's just one of those people, if Christy needed me in a second, I would drop everything and help her out. And I really do think she's that fucking cool that it would be very much a vice versa. But somebody just put out straight up like she retired to do yoga. I'm like, it's not what she did. I really don't know why she didn't return to her role, because I didn't message her about it, because it's not my fucking business. Even as a friend, if she didn't volunteer that information, who cares? Like, but yeah, I don't know. And so talking about it in social media, there are a lot of other people that are like, hey, yeah, so most of y'all do things that aren't just anime. And like, fucking thank you. I don't know why that's such a concept, but you know, we all just have other things going on. And just because it's, we're working perhaps in stuff that isn't immediately recognizable, or maybe stuff that we just talk about. There's the less, I don't know how to say, like, I guess like glamorous jobs. Like, do you really want to hear about like this industrial where I talked about how to properly use a forklift? Do you want me to like get into like the nitty gritty of that? I mean, I could, but that's typically not what you know me for. But we all work on different things. And sometimes when it's not, like, maybe it's a bunch of us are talking about how really slow it is right now for voiceover. And it is. It's a lot slower than I'm used to. So it makes me feel a bunch of ways about it. And so maybe I'm taking it a little more personal, but I really don't think I am. I'm just annoyed that people can be like, oh, well, yeah, I did like a lazy ass Google search of this person, so she's probably doing this. Let me make that a fucking fact. Fuck you. Micah's not dead. Christy's just not Levy anymore. And I've heard Hannah, forgive me, I don't remember her last name off the top of my head. She sounds great. She's making Levy her own thing. I think that it's if you are going to replace somebody, it's a really nerve-wracking thing, because you know this character is already established by another person. So, like, let's focus on the fact that Levy is back. Christy's living her life. Hannah's probably really enjoying being Levy. Haven't checked with Hannah either, because we're not friends. We are mere colleagues, but congratulations to her. Congratulations to Gabe Kunda, who's Panther Lily now, and Rick Keeling. Hope Rick is doing great. And this is all, I feel like I have to say this, like, this is all Terry just talking. I do not speak for anyone but myself. But also, hey, can we just chill out with the misinformation just because you want easy answers, and if they're not available to you, you'll just kind of make some assumptions. Let's not do that. But yeah, let's see. Let's make some hydration happen. No, I was planning to talk about like Fairy Tale, and definitely want to also mention that it is interesting. Like, I was thinking about, I was worried, like, oh, am I going to sound different? And I cannot speak for anyone but myself. But I've gotten nothing but positive feedback from Virgo's first appearance. But I want to remind everybody, a couple years ago, I got COVID really, really bad, to the point where I could not talk. And there was a point during healing myself and getting my lung capacity back to where it should have been. There was a point where I was thinking I was done. If you want to call that retired, fine. But I was really afraid for a second there that I wasn't going to be able to voice act anymore, because I didn't think I was healthy enough to do it because of what COVID did to my fucking lungs. After a lot of breathing exercises, yoga, and walking, just a lot of stuff, I'm back to where I was. But there was this fear coming back to a character that you haven't voiced since before COVID, where it's like, oh God, I hope I can still do it. And the second I did it and I left, I was like, of course I could still do it. You, like, talking to myself in the mirror, like, of course you could still do it, you beautiful bitch. But not only just COVID, but like, since it's been 5+ years since we've done these characters, a lot's happened to us. And also Texas, if you're recording in Texas, I can't speak for where anybody else is recording. It's not being very friendly, air-wise, allergy-wise. So, all that to be said, people are like, whoa, these people sound different. I don't really hear the differences in pretty much anybody's performance. I just hear that they've been with these characters for a while. I think we have to remember that even while we were doing the initial run, Virgo's voice changes here and there. And it's not just because of her different form, but it's sometimes I could have been pushed to go higher, and other times, you know, maybe she was sick. Like I always talk about, like Laughing Under the Clouds. There's a point in like the second to last episode where we stopped in the middle of an episode, and I, you know, like because my time was done, and we're like, hey, we'll see you tomorrow, or like we'll see you next week and finish up this episode. In the middle of doing that, I got sick, and I still came in because the schedule couldn't really be forgiving in that respect. And so I told Joel, who's directing it, I'm like, hey, just so you know, I'm sick. So I'm not going to sound 100% like Chutaro right now. And he went, let's just assume his balls dropped mid-scene. This character is like 14. But he, and Chutaro sounded fine. Only I really hear it, but that's enough to just be like, oh God, someone's going to be like, Terry, what the hell happened to your voice? And so I guess maybe all of that just kind of rang to like, someone's going to be like, what made you think you could do the Virgo voice again? Ugh, you should have just given up the role, something. But yeah, I saw some people kind of like being like, hey, so-and-so sounds different. Like I don't hear it, guys. But also remember, like, I've been thinking a lot because of that anime show. I'm looking at like, I've been re-listening to episodes, and I'm a pretty decent way through. New episodes every Thursday, new old episodes every Thursday. And I realized very soon I'll have to listen to an episode with Chris Ayres, which I'm like, oh, that's going to be an interesting one. One, because I haven't heard it in so long. It's like, I definitely haven't heard it since Chris has left us. But I distinctly remember Chris mentioning this, and I've mentioned this on that anime show. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it here. There were people that were, it was an actress that he had worked with in Houston. This is like old ADV days. And it was like her first big role, and she was so excited until people started hearing it. And she got really good feedback. But of course, as is often the case, she did not focus on the good feedback she was getting. She focused on like the hate that she was getting, which was completely unjustified. If you don't like something, I don't need to fucking hear that you don't like it. Like as a creative, if you didn't like my book, like I'm never going to shit pile on you for like writing a bad review. Just be like, it wasn't for them. When I write a review, I don't want to hear from the author. Like just take the note or not. There's taking the note, but when it's not constructive criticism, when it's just, I hated this, and it's not coming from a place of like, and here's how we're going to tweak this, or here's like moving forward. If it's just, I hated this and therefore I hate you kind of mentality, it doesn't help anybody. But the actress was getting like really like down in the dumps about it. And Chris had to tell her like, hey, like, it's not you. If they hate on it, what they're really hating is my direction, because I approved that take. I loved what you did. So if anyone's going to have a problem with something, they should have a problem with me. They shouldn't have a problem with you. That's definitely a generalization of what he said, what he said numerous times through different panels and interviews. But I wish, if you don't like something, you know, if it didn't vibe with you, like, I get it. I'm also a fan of stuff. There are things sometimes that I say online. I'm like, oh God, if I ever want to work, you know, like maybe I shouldn't shit talk this person. It's like, as a fan, I'm still pretty forgiving of things. But then sometimes it's like, whoa, I don't understand how this got made in this day and age. Looking at you, Killing Joke. The cartoon movie. But I've said too much. I I don't think I listen to the episode. I watch everything that we do. I saw nothing but joy. I like all of us. We've been with these characters, granted, like even including the 5-year gap, for what, 15 years? At least 14, 15 years. So yeah, we love these characters. We really, really do. And I think that comes through in the performances. But, you know, it's never going to sound like episode 1 of something. I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, like I'd say that like the people that talk about it, like it's a small minority, but yeah, like, you know, just remember time is a thing. And please, if you hate Virgo, I don't want to hear from you. But again, that's just Terri speaking. It's nobody else. And I did get a couple of questions from people. I decided, since I was going to talk about possibly like the family member passing away in Fairy Tale, that I may or may not take questions, or like, but somebody asked about like a post I made regarding emotional immaturity and narcissism. I'd rather not talk about that. Rather not talk about that right now. If you would like me to expand on that, we could, please let me know. The question form is open already for August's show, and you let me know how you're feeling and what you want me to expand on, and I will do what I can, while minimizing my risk of getting sued. I'm only half joking about that. And then people wanted me to talk about what is now, like, as of this episode, pretty new information. It's the SAG-AFTRA strike. I think there's a lot of amazing information out there, and right now I'm just supporting those that are on strike and standing in solidarity. And so I'll try to leave a link up of frequently asked questions or things that you're curious about from SAG-AFTRA themselves, and hopefully that helps. But if you'd like me to talk about that more, I'm not opposed to that. We can just do that at another time. But yeah, it really does feel like I just talked to you guys and didn't. But then also with so much happening, like I had kind of mentioned that I've been working on a prelay pilot for something that's very, very cute, and I'd love to talk about it, but I don't want to talk about it just yet. There are a couple of other things in the works too, but yeah, very, very lucky, very, very happy, and feeling just really good. Really good about things the way they are, just with everything that we've already talked about. I'm very, very ready to get back in the booth recording this, but I think I'm getting a little spoiled just talking in my living room. As always, I am still watching something and all of that, but revisiting that anime show has been a lot of fun, but also just kind of a surreal experience in some ways, because as I've talked about, you know, reconnecting with my brother and I'm hearing, you know, old episodes that are 14 years old, and I'm hearing me and Tatum at a different point in our lives, in our friendship. This is like when we saw each other like every other day. We were always texting each other. He didn't have a booth yet. So he would come over to do like auditions, cause we lived pretty close to each other, and all this stuff. And like did like dinner once a week. Like we don't do any of that anymore. So it's just like, wow, to hear that. But what's really throwing me is hearing 25, 26-year-old Terri, and kind of like cringing a little. I've mentioned it in the little like legalese stuff on every episode, which as far as the RSS feed and YouTube, we're on episode 4. We're about to be on episode 5 as of this recording. But I'm listening to stuff as if it were a time capsule, but some of it's like oh my God, there are so many things I hadn't worked through at this point, and there are things that only you yourself can pick up when you're like looking at a photo, being like, "Oh man, I look so happy there." Like people don't know, but I was going through this at the time, and blah blah blah. And that is that anime show a good chunk of the time. Like I wasn't confident as a performer yet, and I don't think I was confident as a host. Always wanted to do a radio show, and that's where that anime show initially happened. But to listen to that anime show and then think about doing Obscure Chatter solo is fucking wild. It is wild. I'm like, oh, hey, little Terri, you're gonna grow, baby. You're gonna be that solo host, Dr. Fraser Crane type of person with your Roz in the other room. Steven's hanging out with Willow in the studio, all that. But it's kind of trippy. And then on top of that, like there are things where like I was still a vegetarian at the time, and oh my gosh, and yeah, like Hayden was seeing someone else at the beginning of the show, and so, you know, it's just like, wow, oh my God, has it been that long ago? And then like hearing interviews with people that I don't see very often, like I'm like, oh my God, you know, like Alexis Tipton, who I just ran into this week for the first time in like years, or like Chris Burnett, and then hearing like my girl Tia, and hearing Brina, who I don't see enough. I don't see any of these people enough, these amazingly talented people. It makes me miss having guests on this show, but I don't miss the complexity. We would have to record somewhere else for a guest, I think, worth both of us being comfortable. The booth I have is a booth where multiple people can fit technically, but it's not going to be a comfortable show. So who knows? Who knows what the future holds? But I hope you guys are enjoying these solo episodes because I'm still really enjoying doing them. Someone else brought up that they were grateful for this kind of like audible diary that I'm doing. And there definitely is the diary aspect, but also it's kind of just answering questions that I don't get to answer at cons because I'm not doing cons really for the foreseeable future or all that, and getting to talk about my loves, my likes, my dislikes, my gripes. There's some kind of rhyming scheme that could have happened better in all of that. But yeah, as we close out for July, please continue to listen wherever you want. There's, off the top of my head, let's see if I can remember most of them. There's Audible, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. There's one, I forget what the name of the one for Android is. And then, yeah, just the RSS feed, Player FM. Just throw that in there too. But, and that includes, TAS Rewind, which is that anime show. But that anime show has its own YouTube channel, That Anime Show Podcast. Very simple, nitty gritty. Hope you guys are enjoying the re-releases. It really does seem like you are, because I get to talk to people that I've met through that anime show. You know, like my friends, Benjamin Oscar, who is my VHS buddy. He's the best VHS buddy around. Erin Daniel, who always kind of like checks in with me after she's listened to the episode. And Erin, I forget exactly when Erin and I got to know each other. But it was through Instagram. And I think it was because we were reading a similar book or watching a show at the time. But she had also like made this t-shirt that she sent to me, like Terri Doty Brings Out the Wolf in Me. And it's from like Stephanie Young's show. And we finally got to meet in Colorado, all this stuff. And I, you know, now we just text each other all the time and share what's going on in our lives. And that's fucking amazing. Podcasting has led to some amazing relationships with people I never would have encountered if I hadn't done that. I mean, cons are a big part of it too, but like, hey, podcasting, bringing people together through common likes, dislikes, gripes, loves, gloves. Oh yeah, it's probably time to go. I'm not in the booth, but the booth madness might be setting in. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, I want you to read good shit. I want you to watch good shit. And I want you to just entertain the idea of not being a shit. Until next time.